They taught you to measure yourself against others before you ever learned how to measure yourself against yesterday. They handed you a ruler made of opinions, applause, and comparison, and told you this was how success is defined. But deep down, in the quiet moments when the world goes silent, you've always felt it, an unrest, a resistance, a knowing. You were not placed on this earth to run someone else's race. You were not born to compete for scraps of approval, borrowed titles, or second-hand dreams. You were born to dominate your own life. And domination does not begin outside. It begins in the invisible territory of the mind. Every era has tried to shrink the individual. Crowds are easier to control than conscious men and women. The system praises conformity and punishes originality, because originality requires courage, and courage cannot be automated. Yet history never remembers the obedient. It remembers the decisive. Edison was told thousands of times that his ideas wouldn't work, but he was not competing with other inventors, he was obsessed with a vision. Lincoln lost election after election, buried children, and stood ridiculed, yet he never measured himself against rivals, he measured himself against conscience. Carnegie started as a poor immigrant boy, not chasing wealth, but mastering value. Disney was fired for lacking imagination, yet imagination was the very kingdom he ruled. None of them woke up asking, "Who am I better than?" They asked a more dangerous question, "Who must I become?" The tragedy of most lives is not failure. It is misdirected effort. People exhaust themselves trying to outperform others while never outgrowing themselves. They chase status instead of substance. They want recognition without refinement, reward without responsibility. But domination of life is an inside job. Napoleon Hill understood this long before the modern world drowned it out with noise. He knew that the battlefield of destiny is not the market, not the classroom, not the economy, but the mind. Because once the mind is conquered, the world must adjust. Your life does not rise to the level of your wishes. It falls to the level of your self-concept. How you see yourself in private determines what you tolerate in public. If you secretly believe you are small, life will hand you small outcomes. If you believe you are ordinary, the extraordinary will pass you by as if you are invisible. But the moment you decide, truly decide, that you are the architect, not the tenant, everything shifts. Decision is the first act of domination. Not a wish. Not a hope. A decision so firm that doubt has no room to negotiate. Most people think belief comes after evidence. That is backward. Belief creates evidence. Every great achievement in history began as a thought that defied the facts of its time. When Henry Ford said he would build a V8 engine in a single block, engineers laughed. The math said impossible. Ford said build it anyway. Months passed. Nothing worked. The team wanted to quit. Ford refused. And one day, the impossible yielded. Not because physics changed, but because belief outlasted resistance. This is the law the timid never learn, reality bends to persistence infused with faith. But belief without clarity is chaos. Domination requires direction. You cannot command a life you cannot define. The majority drift through existence reacting instead of creating, responding instead of deciding. They let circumstances choose for them, then call it fate. But fate is not something you inherit, it is something you authorize. When you are clear about what you want, the mind becomes a laser. Energy stops leaking. Distractions lose their grip. You stop dabbling and start building. Clarity is ruthless. It forces you to say no. It demands sacrifice. It will cost you comfort, excuses, and sometimes people who only knew the smaller version of you. But understand this, confusion is expensive. A scattered mind produces a scattered life. Purpose, once defined, becomes a compass that cuts through fear. You no longer ask, what if I fail? You ask, what if I obey the vision? And obedience to vision is where discipline is born. Discipline is not punishment. It is self-respect in action. It is the daily demonstration that you trust yourself. Every time you do what you said you would do, your identity strengthens. Every time you break a promise to yourself, it weakens. The world is not dominated by talent alone. It is dominated by those who can command their impulses, their time, their focus. Steel is forged by heat and pressure. So is character. Action is where belief proves itself. Not frantic motion, not busy work, but deliberate, aligned action. The kind that moves even when motivation is absent. The kind that understands momentum is created, not found. You will never feel ready. Readiness is a myth comfort sells to the fearful. The dominant act before confidence arrives, knowing confidence is the reward of movement. And as you move, you must learn gratitude, not as politeness, but as power. Gratitude anchors you in abundance. It reminds you that you are not lacking, you are building. It keeps arrogance away and resilience strong. The grateful mind sees opportunity where the bitter mind sees obstacles. Gratitude sharpens perception, and perception determines possibility. Life will test you. It always does. Adaptability is the silent weapon of domination. Rigid minds break under pressure, flexible minds evolve. When plans collapse, purpose remains. When doors close, awareness opens. Resilience is not toughness, it is refusal to surrender meaning. Lincoln did not quit when the nation fractured. He adapted, learned, endured. The storm did not weaken him, it revealed him. Learning is the fuel of longevity. The moment you believe you know enough, you begin to decline. The dominant stay curious. They read, observe, reflect. They turn mistakes into mentors. Failure becomes feedback. Pain becomes instruction. Nothing is wasted when the mind is awake. And now you begin to understand. This life was never about beating others. It was about mastering yourself. Your thoughts. Your habits. Your standards. Your vision. The world does not need another competitor. It needs more individuals who have conquered their inner chaos and stand grounded in purpose. You were not born to compete. You were born to dominate your own life. And domination begins the moment you stop asking permission, from the world, from fear, from the past, and start commanding the only territory that truly matters. Your mind. And once the mind is commanded, something subtle but unstoppable begins to happen. Your presence changes. You walk differently, not with arrogance, but with certainty. You speak differently, not louder, but clearer. You no longer rush to explain yourself, because explanation is the language of insecurity. The world starts responding to you not because you demand it, but because inner order always creates outer alignment. Chaos recognizes authority. Confusion bows to clarity. This is where most people turn back. Not because the path is too hard, but because it is too quiet. There is no applause when you wake up early and face your weaknesses. No audience when you say no to easy pleasures for long-term power. No medal for the hours spent refining a skill when no one is watching. But domination has never been loud in the beginning. Seeds grow in darkness. Steel is tempered in isolation. The dominant understand that obscurity is not a curse, it is preparation. The mind will try to pull you back to the familiar. It will whisper that you are doing too much, aiming too high, expecting too much of yourself. That voice is not intuition. It is conditioning. It is the echo of every limit you were taught to accept. But domination requires you to challenge the inherited narrative. You must become conscious of your thoughts, because unchecked thoughts become chains. What you repeat internally becomes your operating system. And most people are running outdated code. Napoleon Hill wrote that thoughts are things. Not metaphors, forces. Invisible, but formative. Persistent thoughts harden into habits. Habits crystallize into character. Character dictates destiny. This is not poetry. It is mechanics. You dominate your life by dominating what you allow to live rent-free in your mind. Fear must be interrogated, not obeyed. Doubt must be examined, not trusted. Emotion must be felt, but never allowed to rule. This does not mean you become cold. It means you become deliberate. You learn to respond instead of react. To pause where others panic. To see options where others see walls. This is emotional command. The ability to remain centered while the world tries to pull you into its drama. The dominant do not suppress emotion, they harness it. Anger becomes fuel. Pain becomes perspective. Pressure becomes precision. Vision now deepens. It stops being about achievement alone and becomes about contribution. True domination is not selfish. It expands. The more you align with purpose, the more your success creates space for others to rise. Carnegie funded libraries not to be praised, but because his wealth meant nothing without meaning. Purpose is what keeps power from turning hollow. Without purpose, success rots. With purpose, struggle becomes sacred. You will outgrow versions of yourself. This can feel like loss. Old habits will resist eviction. Old relationships may not survive the upgrade. But growth has always been a process of subtraction before multiplication. The sculptor removes stone to reveal the statue. You must remove what no longer serves the future you. Attachment is heavy. Dominance requires lightness. There will be moments when progress feels invisible. When effort seems unrewarded. When silence answers your discipline. This is the crucible. This is where faith is tested, not faith in outcome, but faith in identity. Do you still show up when no one is clapping? Do you still believe when results lag behind effort? Edison did. So did Ford. So did every builder of anything that lasted. Time delays results to separate the committed from the curious. And then something shifts again. Not all at once, but unmistakably. Opportunities appear where resistance once lived. People begin to trust you, not because you convince them, but because consistency creates credibility. You stop chasing validation because alignment feels better than approval. The inner war quiets. Focus sharpens. Life feels less like a struggle and more like a mission. You begin to understand that domination is not control over others, but command over self. Freedom is not the absence of structure, it is the mastery of it. You build routines that serve your vision. You guard your attention like a fortress. You respect time because you finally respect yourself. The days stop slipping away. Each one becomes intentional. And now, when adversity comes, as it always will, you meet it differently. Not as a victim asking, "Why me?" but as a strategist asking, "What now?" You are no longer surprised by resistance. You expect it. You welcome it. Because resistance is proof you are moving forward. Comfort never produces strength. Ease never forges leaders. Pressure is the price of potential. The world will continue to compete. To compare. To copy. Let it. You are no longer available for that game. Your focus is vertical, not horizontal. Upward, inward, forward. You are building something quieter, deeper, more enduring. You were not born to compete for attention, approval, or rank. You were born to dominate your own life, to think with clarity, act with discipline, endure with purpose, and rise with integrity. And once you do, the world doesn't need to be conquered. It adjusts. Because a person who has mastered themselves has already won the only battle that ever mattered.